Welcome back to Archbishop's Hour. You're listening to us at 98.9 FM in Albuquerque, 104.5 in Santa Fe, and 100.7 in Gallup. And I am just thrilled today to be able to speak with the chair of the Board of Directors of the National Association of Lay Ministry. That is, or she is, Jamie Maloney, speaking to us via phone. So delighted to have you on the show, Jamie. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for asking me.
You know, our own Deacon Keith Davis, who is the Director of Formation for Christian Service Office for the Archdiocese, as well as the Ministry Resource Center, our library, has been very active in, do I call it for short NALM or NALM?
NALM.
NALM. All right.
Yep, that works. That works.
We'll keep reminding people that it's the National Association for Lay Ministry, but it's hard to say that phrase or even listen to a long phrase too often. So NALM it is. But he has been involved over many years, and I'm just thrilled that he gave me a recommendation to give you a call. Can you tell us a little about yourself and how you became involved in this Association of Lay Ministry?
Certainly. I was working as a pastoral associate for pastoral care at our parish, which is within the Archdiocese of St. Paul in Minneapolis. And when I was working on my master's in pastoral ministry, we were studying the national standards and certification, which, of course, NALM was very instrumental in working on those. So we were encouraged to join both our local and national associations for our ministry areas. Since I was already really active in our local association for pastoral ministers, I decided to join the National Association for Lay Ministry in 2013. I finished my degree in 2014.
Wow. How long have you been working for the church?
I started at my parish in 2002, and then in 2015, I left and jumped into the world of volunteering for the associations I was already working with.
Wow. All right. So tell us about your current position and what that entails.
Sure. Well, currently I am the chair of NALM. I also am on the advocacy and communications committees and also on the Ministry Formation Task Force, where we're working on seminary formation with the laity. And it's not unusual at all for people on the various committees to serve on more than one or two committees and task forces. So it's just a very active group. Okay, what was the other part of your question?
Well, I have to ask, tell me about this connection of seminary formation with the laity. How's that working? That would seem to be an oxymoron.
Okay, so there's the priestly formation document that was written back, I believe it was 1992, by Pope John Paul II. It was further reinforced and emphasized by Pope Benedict XVI, and it also has been promoted by Pope Francis, that when seminarians are in training, it has to be hand in hand with the laity, because they're going to be working with the laity throughout all their, for their duties as a priest of parishes in diocese. And so a lot of that is lost, because the seminarians have so many other things they have to focus on. So what we've done, this task force headed by Father Joe Merck, looked at the different areas in that priestly formation document from Rome, pulled out the pieces that really emphasized working with the laity, and then we put a document together that focuses on what we can do as lay ministers to help in that formation. And then we're also working on a field placement document that they actually can use for seminarians and for parishes that can further facilitate that kind of training. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, and it is really, I think for most Catholics in the pews, it's actually a rather revolutionary and innovative approach that they might not be aware of. Many people have reactions to, a newly ordained priest in their parish, and feeling that they want to help them out, and they're just getting their sea legs in their vocation in application, the priests, and then there are many lay people who feel that they will be under a new leader and will just have to see what the new leader says and will not have input. And they may be sensitive about having enough input in how their parish life goes on. So the idea that the National Association of Lay Ministry is actively involved in creating a kind of roadmap of best practices for everyone in this regard is really wonderful. That's really pretty exciting. And in fact, is that at the core of everything NALM does? Because lay ministry is always going to be lay ministry.
No, this is a separate task force that really is focusing on the seminarian formation with the laity. NALM's focus is for lay ministry overall. Maybe to clarify, well, let me tell you the mission of NALM and why that's so important. The National Association for Lay Ministry is a collaborative organization of lay, religious, and ordained ministers that empowers, advocates for, and develops lay pastoral leadership and promotes the growth of lay pastoral ministry in the Catholic Church. So it focuses on all areas of lay ministry, whereas the Seminarian Formation Task Force really is only focusing on a very narrow, specific area that needs some attention.
Are there other aspects or initiatives in NALM that also take you into narrow and specific channels, like this one of working with seminary and seminary training?
Yes. We have an advocacy committee, and we look at more specific areas of need. For example, justice in employment, justice in the workplace is one area. But over the years, NALM was formed in 1976, so they have over 40 years of history. And during that time, they have been involved in many different ways of promoting lay ministry. We have many articles and books over that 40 years that have been issued by NALM or in collaboration with other national associations and groups, collaborative papers, presentations on the role and the reality of lay ministry from the Second Vatican Council through today. We've also been very actively involved in standards, national certification, the recognition and authorization of lay ministers, like through commissioning, public ceremonies. They helped in the creation of the document Co-workers in the Vineyard of the Lord, which the USCCB, the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, had put out in 2005, so they were a huge part of that. They participated back in 1986 in the Synod of the Laity that was actually in Rome. A whole group of them flew to Rome to be part of that. And so NALM continues to be actively involved nationally and internationally supporting lay ministry.
That is amazing. And it's so, talk about, a big umbrella of so many various aspects of what people could say, oh, lay ministers in, the parish, they just do this and that. And it's actually huge. This is a huge concept. And of course, it also references something that we've heard many times from church leadership, but most recently from Pope Francis, that the church is the people. And the idea of the lay ministers being an expression of leadership within the people of God, with the hierarchy being the servants of the people. It all comes together, but it's very complex, as you've just elaborated. For a moment there, one could have thought that NALM also was a little bit like a sort of lay ministry union. You know, when you talk about justice and employment in parishes and best practices, somebody has got to speak for that work as professional work, even though within the parlance of the church, lay ministry sounds like, well, they're not professional because they're not ordained. Do you get a lot of that?
Exactly. Yes, and coworkers, that's what that was all about. There's a whole section in coworkers about authorization. And actually, if we speak a little bit later about the listening session yesterday that we had with Archbishop Wester, he actually speaks to that and that whole authorization piece. And I do want to point out for our listeners who might not know this, NALM is, so the people who join the National Association for Lay Ministry, they're anyone who works in lay ministry in paid and unpaid positions. So that gets to what you just said, you know, the people at the parish level that might not be paid, but they're still actively doing lay ministry. And anyone who supports lay ministry. So we have lay ministers, we have vowed religious, deacons, priests, all those who are members. So we support everybody in lay ministry. We're not focused on any one area, such as faith formation, liturgy, or youth ministry. There are other national associations that are. So that's what makes NALM unique.
It's comprehensive.
Yes.
Let's go back for a moment to who is invited to join. I think you just covered it, but we'll say it again. And if you have an idea of what the membership numbers are like.
Right now, we're somewhere between 300 and 350 active members. We have over 800 people in our database because not everyone has renewed this year. But over within the last 5 years, we've had approximately 800. But again, not everybody is current. Right now, we're roughly 300 for current.
All right. And who do you invite to join?
Anybody who is in lay ministry or supports lay ministry. So in the latest numbers that we have, there are over 40,000 active lay ministers in North America.
Say that again?
There are over 40,000.
That's 40. 40,000.
It's a lot. So we are not touching a whole lot of them. And I think a lot of that is when you're working at a parish level, sometimes you can feel very isolated, like that you're the only ones out there doing this because you're so busy and you're so focused. So what we try to do is branch out with our members and say, let everybody know, because it's such a great support to be part of a professional association on a national level where you can talk to other people, share best practices, and also talk about the challenges and the joys that come with that.
Wow. I'm going to jump ahead for the moment to in our topics of the day to this virtual meeting that the National Association of Lay Ministry had with our own Archbishop of Santa Fe, Archbishop John Wester, yesterday, because he's on the board. How would you describe his position with NALM?
Glad you asked. He's actually our Episcopal moderator. So all of the national associations that are they're not really under the umbrella of the USCCB, but they are recognized Catholic national associations, have an Episcopal moderator that works on their behalf and is also their liaison really to the USCCB. So he is ours, and he's just been a wonderful, wonderful support of lay ministry. We are more than blessed to have him as our Episcopal moderator. And he is, when we asked him, would you do a listening session? He agreed right away. He didn't even hesitate. And so what we did, we specifically made it a listening session as opposed to him presenting, so that our members could really have questions and answers and a dialogue with him. So if you'd like, I can certainly share some of what he shared with us.
Absolutely. And in fact, what are the concerns that you have that you could share, and then the response? That would be fascinating.
Yeah, before I even get into that, though, how he started the whole listening session when he's welcoming people was just wonderful. So if there are lay ministers listening, listen up, because this is really great how he started this. He said that we are all called to ministry through our baptism. So through the grace of the sacrament of baptism, we are all ecclesial ministers. And he emphasized the importance of building relationships, especially between lay ministers and the clergy, because they work so closely together. And that through these relationships, we can recognize the call of baptism in each one of us. And he said that really comes into play when there are challenges, because if you already have that respect and that understanding, then when you have some challenges, such as when maybe someone feels their baptism is not recognized as it should, when the role of the lay minister might be seen maybe as less than that of the priest, you can have a conversation about it because of that respect and relationship you've built up. So attendees did pose some very difficult and challenging questions, such as what to do and where to find hope when a pastor doesn't respect the lay minister. And he admitted that sometimes the life of a bishop, and of course we can also imagine the life of a pastor, can become pushed in so many areas that they lose perspective. And that's when we, as lay ministers, need to just help them regain that perspective, kind of being back in right relationship. And he also said that even though bishops are called to teach the faithful, that Pope Francis reminds them that the good teacher has to listen first. And of course, that's what Jesus did throughout all the Gospels. He would listen first, and then he would teach. And the listening piece is all part of this synodal process, if I'm pronouncing that right. And then somebody asked what still needs to be done from the Co-workers in the Vineyard document that came out in 2005. And Archbishop Wester said that we have to offer more formation for the laity and commit the financial resources needed for formation. He also said that the church needs to recognize lay ecclesial ministers across the nation, just as they do for the permanent diaconate. And he also said there has to be a standardized way or path to become a lay ecclesial minister that is recognized no matter where you might live in the country. And then somebody asked what the greatest gift of lay ecclesial ministries was. And I'm going to quote this because somebody sent it to me this morning. It's beautiful. The greatest gift lay ecclesial ministers bring to the church is their willingness to share their love for Jesus. It's not what they do, as important as that is, but who they are. And where lay ecclesial ministry is thwarted, the Holy Spirit is thwarted.
That is incredibly powerful and resonant, I think, for all of our communities today. And thank you so much for sharing that, those insights from that meeting that, of course, it was a meeting for and with the National Association of Lay Ministry and the Episcopal moderator, Archbishop John Wester. But the message is so powerful and important for all of our church, certainly for all of my listeners, to be able to understand how that relationship is perceived, how it is cultivated, that is the relationship between the volunteers and sometimes professional lay ministers in our churches and their relationship with the ordained clergy, and that people are thinking about how the best relationships should work, and then working towards that. It's very interesting, this idea of a standardized path that should be decided upon, I guess. I was going to ask what part of the focus of NALM is on day-to-day practices as compared to spiritual development. And that idea of a standardized approach would seem to address that. Is that how you would take that?
I think it has to be a combination of a lot of things. For example, when I was thinking over that particular question, you can't really separate out the spiritual from the day-to-day work because it's all intertwined. That's why we do what we do. So I'm trying to see here.
It's ministry is
Sorry.
ministry.
And
It's not ever going to be just, not that we're denigrating it, but it's not going to be just doing the paperwork or, the paperwork for people preparing for their sacraments or just, there is no just about it when all of it is the spiritual call.
Exactly. Everything is from that spiritual. So NALM does focus on day-to-day stuff, but we also focus on overall, where we step back from that day-to-day and look at overall the situations for lay ministers. I do want to go back a little bit to, the best practices. What's interesting about the best practices and what's really awesome about it is it comes from a lot of different places. Our best practices come from the members themselves and their own experiences at their parish or diocesan level. And we also have people who work in healthcare, spiritual direction, more of the non-traditional areas, too, that are members. So in all of those, the best practices come from what is working for them, what's working best, and especially during COVID, this has been critical because best practices are developing every day because this is all new territory for everybody. So we offer a place for people to come and talk about that and share that. But also best practices come from our collaboration with other national associations. What are they doing? What's working for them? And what is kind of overall national? That's where the standards came from. What do we all have in common when we're talking about standards when we're doing ministry in the Catholic Church? So our best practices come from all sorts of places. Now, on a more practical day-to-day basis, when COVID started, we started having virtual small group meetings like 2 to 3 times a week that were facilitated, but Keith is one of our facilitators and some of our other members. And it was just a place where they could go, sign in, and say, here's what's going on. And we're trying this, and we're trying that. And does anyone have ideas of how we can better do this? For example, how do we best call our parishioners who are homebound, who we think can't get to the doctor, can't get prescriptions? And they just mobilized and shared with each other. And then the challenges. I have a loved one who's sick, or I'm worried about my own family getting COVID, or how do we start going back into the church? There's all sorts of concerns that people were bringing forward as well. So helping that day-to-day reality of ministry is really important.
That's very powerful, really impressive, that in new and strange environments, like the environment of living in a global pandemic, and then having to, wanting to take your ministry forward, you have that ability to meet and talk about, at a grassroots level, what are the real concerns. We all understand our mission and what we do. How do we apply our understanding of that to how we address all of these things? Just depending on one voice from the top, the upper echelons, doesn't necessarily address what the workers in the field are dealing with. And that's just what you've been doing. It's amazing. I find this quite inspiring.
It's been an incredible experience listening to all the stories. We're trying to figure out ways of capturing that and sharing it with people because they worked, the lay ministers, it was like field work in a hospital, like Pope Francis talks about. They rallied the parishioners to check on their neighbors and to offer food and other necessities in their communities. And they worked really hard to help the priests get the masses online and to put liturgical worship aids together in an online liturgy. All these things were going into place, and Holy Week was coming up, and just all of the work they did. They were working more hours at home than they ever worked in the church itself. But then, after Holy Week, and the whole financial reality came into play, many of them were furloughed, unpaid furloughed. Some of them completely lost their jobs. They were facing unemployment like so many other people around the country. And it was heartbreaking to see that. But even in the midst of that, the joy and faith that they had, so here's some of the things they shared with us. Parishioners continued financial giving through e-giving, so some parishes didn't feel the financial effects as hard as others. Parishioners came together, like I said, to provide food and other necessities. They were driving people to stores and appointments, and the creativity used not only by the lay ministers but by the people whom they were serving was just faith-giving. And so what people were sharing is that their own faith was deepened during this whole crisis, and the faith of the parishioners was deepened during it because of all of these things. And to me, that's where Christ really shines through, that people were showing immense love, faith, joy, and compassion in the midst of isolation, illness, death, and job loss. It's just amazing.
And this is an experience that's been shared by the membership, lay ministers throughout the country, people who are working with the Catholic Church.
And in Canada.
And
there are
in Canada
people in there, too.
Wow. All right. This is very heartening. We've just got a couple of minutes left to our conversation today, and I know that there's so much more to talk about, but is there a way that people can get more information if they're already working, maybe volunteering, or maybe they have degrees and they're, working in their parishes? How do they get more information about the National Association of Lay Ministry?
The best way is to go to our website. There's contact information on there if they want to contact me directly. There's also our NALM at nalm.org. So NALM at nalm.org is the email that comes to both me and our office administrator. And also just go to our website, www.nalm.org.
All right. NALM for National Association Lay Ministry. So NALM.org is where you can get more information. And this is a terrible thing for me to do, because I'm going to ask you, like in 1 or 2 words, to suggest what you see in the future of lay ministry in the Catholic Church in the United States.
1 or 2 words? Okay. Well, it's very difficult to answer because everything's changing now with COVID. So things that are now virtual will stay virtual, and that I think that's going to change the look and feel of lay ministry. And I think what needs to happen is, if you go back to what I said about Archbishop Wester, the lay ecclesial ministers need to be better recognized as part of the structure of the Catholic Church.
Amen. I can't thank you enough for sharing this time with us today. And tell us again where you're speaking to us from.
I'm in a suburb of St. Paul, Minnesota.
So we can wave to the north and a little bit to the east from where we are in New Mexico. But thank you so much. Jamie Maloney is the chair of the National Association for Lay Ministry, and sharing her insight with us today, and also insight about our own Archbishop as Episcopal moderator of NALM. Find out more at nalm.org. And Jamie, thanks so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening to Archbishop's Hour Catholic Radio.
For the past 60 minutes, you've been listening to the Archbishop's Hour from the Catholic Center in Albuquerque. Join us Monday through Friday, noon to 1, for the Archbishop's Hour, discussing with our guests and audience issues of importance to New Mexico Catholics and all the people of God. Thank you for listening and supporting Catholic Radio.